Welcome back to Mogsymakes. Today it's time for another Midgard notebook video in which I take an in-depth look at a part of my Midgard Heroic Battles rules. Combat is the main feature in Midgard games. The rules take up the biggest section of the book, and rightfully so. The ancient, medieval and legendary and fantasy battles that Midgard represents were almost universally settled in close quarters combat. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate some of the basics of combat resolution, but also dig into some of the more complex areas, such as flank and rear attacks. Although the game delves into fantasy and legendary worlds, I've tried very hard to base the combat as much as possible about what I've read about real-life ancient and medieval battles. The combat focuses very much on keeping a battle line, which is what the support rules are all about. Making sure, whether you want to call that a shield wall or not, but making sure that you've got friends behind you and friends to the side of you. Following John Keegan's theories about heroic leadership, making sure that your leaders are at the front, or at least near enough to influence combats. In the video you're about to see, you'll see an elven leader coming to grief because they blew all their mighty deeds earlier on in the turn. One thing that Midgard gives you is choices about what to do with your heroes. When do you spend those mighty deeds? Do you play cautious and hold them back? Do you use them to try and build an early advantage? And that's completely up to you. My last Midgard video, the notebook about movement, used my 6mm Trojan Wars collection, but today we're going to be using Orcs and Elves. And I'm just going to warn you now that not only does the video simulate combat with toy elves and orcs, but the orcs win. Personally, I'm a big orc fan, so I don't mind, but if you cried when Haldir died during the Battle of Helm's Deep in the Peter Jackson 2 Towers movie, or if you were upset by Evangeline Lilly's love for a dwarf coming to a tragic end at the hands of the goblins, you may want to turn down the sound during the combat resolution parts. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get down to the battlefields of Middle-earth and see what's going on with the orcs and elves today. Let's get into our first combat situation. So, got a fairly typical situation from the battlefields of Middle-earth here. I've got 3 units of elves that are about to be attacked by a line of 6 units of orcs. Now, the orcs have foolishly left their hero behind, so they're not going to be able to reroll any command tests. Now, for the sake of simulation, I'm just going to move this unit into combat. So they're going to charge here. They're fresh, they have not lost any stamina, so they don't need to take a command test. They also immediately get a charging or winning marker to show what's happening there. This unit will now move up. The enemy is within 1 spear throw, and they're impetuous. They have to charge straight in anyway, so they will also charge here, also gaining a charging or winning marker. These 2 units will move up in support. This unit here would be able to get a charge in, but we're going to say it's failed its command test. It can't get its second move in, so it stops short over here. And this unit also moves up in support. So what we've got going on now is a combat where we've got 1 elven unit actually fighting 2 orc units. We don't need to split anything. Do we take a quick check on the rules to check which are primary and secondary units. And you can see from there on page 52 that this orc unit is the primary unit because it's got most of its frontage in contact with the elves, and this orc unit is the secondary unit. So now we're on to generating dice for the combat. First thing I need to do is pull out my hand of dice. Now, when playing Midgard, I always suggest that players have a hand of 12 dice the same colour together. We're going to use red for the orcs today. That unit is a 12 dice unit. It gives them 12 dice in combat, but it's an impetuous unit at full strength with a charging or winning marker, so it's going to gain an extra dice. I'm going to put that in as one of the yellow dice because I can quickly reset after the combat. Now, the secondary unit is also going to add its combat dice in. However, because it's the secondary fighting unit, it's only going to add in half of its normal combat dice. It normally has 12, so we're going to put 6 in there. But it does get the bonus 1 for being impetuous at full strength with the charging or winning marker. Orcs are good on the charge when they're fresh, not so much we're in the trouble. Anyway, there's a substantial chunk of dice over there ready for the Orcs to use. The Elf unit is obviously the only unit in contact on this side. So they're fighting to the front. They're going to throw their full 12 dice. They also have a trait called Spears as Tribute, allowing them 2 extra dice for the unit until they take any damage. They have a level 2 hero with them, so he's going to put 2 dice in as well for his levels. Now, I don't know if you can see that or not, but he's also got 2 Mighty Deeds. We decided to be cautious here. He's going to keep 1 Mighty Deed back and spend 1 to gain an extra combat dice. So let's roll the dice and see how we do. Right, the Orcs have got a good handful of dice, a visceral handful of dice, as Colin, one of our playtesters, called it. So what have the Orcs got? The Orcs are looking for 5s to hit. Now the Elf armour is 3, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the hits in groups of 3 behind 2 or next to the unit to make my life easy when resolving the combat. Not doing badly at all at the moment. We have 7, 8, 9 hits. 9 hits from the Orcs. They also have rolled 2 1s, which they can re-roll because they've got charging or winning markers. They've scored another hit. They've got 10 hits in total. Nasty stuff. Now to move on to throwing the Elven dice. They've still got a decent fistful of dice, but can they get 10 hits? Let's find out. So the Elves have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hits. Now, they have got a 1, but they're not allowed to re-roll that because they don't have the charging or winning marker. So the Elves have to stick at 6 hits. Now, you might notice I've put those in pairs, in 2s, because the Orc's armour value is only 2, so I know each one of those is going to be a stamina point of damage. However, before we resolve anything, we need to get support involved, and this is a biggie. So, with support, this is about keeping a battle line together. It's about your friends who are not fighting nearby, providing good morale with strength of numbers, encouragement, that kind of thing, knowing that somebody has literally got your back. Looking at the Elves here, we have got 1 support unit directly behind and 1 to the side. It's within half a spear throw of the fighting unit, and it's not fighting, so it can contribute support. Now, because those are both warrior units, those are both going to contribute 2 support dice. What I'm going to be very careful here is don't pick up your combat dice when you're doing the support dice. So let's roll the Elven support dice. They've got 2 5s and 6s, which is going to remove 2 hits from the Orcs. It doesn't add to the Elves' hits. It removes the Orcs' hits because their strength of numbers has put the Orcs off their stroke, if you like. However, we need to do the same for the Orcs. Now, the unit we're interested in is this unit because this is the primary fighting unit. However, it has got 1, 2, 3, 4 of its friendly units within half a spear throw, meaning it's going to throw a whopping 8 support dice. It's got so many support dice. I've had to nick one of the Elves' dice to make this work. So, got 2, 4, 6, 8 support dice, and we're looking for 5s or 6s. We have just the 1. So, that is going to remove 1 hit from the Elves, which is good news for the Orcs because that is going to reduce the amount of damage they take, even though they're not going to lose the combat overall. Now we've got the number of hits sorted out, just before we move anybody back or forwards, we just need to sort out what happens to our hero here. Now, he's got to take risk to heroes tests. We normally use these Raven dice for doing these. We've got 1, 2, 3 for the 8 hits. He needs to roll 3 Raven dice. Let's see if he can get out of this. Ah, he has been wounded. Well, this is why he saved 1 of his mighty deeds. Now, in this case, he's going to spend it, but let's see what happens. So he can spend it, he loses a point reputation, and he re-rolls that and survives without being wounded. The Orcs have taken 5 points of damage. Now, the Orc's armour is 2, so 2, 4 determines how many points of stamina they lose. So I'm just going to pop that onto here. I use white shields for stamina loss. You can use whatever you like. So I'm just going to pop 2 of those off, and I can now see the Orc unit has taken 2 points of damage. Also looking across here, the Elves have taken 8 armour. These are armour 3, not armour 2. So that's going to be enough to put 2 points of damage onto the elves. Once again, I'm using white shield markers so we can easily see who's damaged and who isn't. Last thing we need to do is to sort out the retreats from that combat. Now, the orcs did 8 hits to the elves 5, so the elves are going to lose. This means they're automatically pushed back. In many games, it seems to be dogma that you have to take morale tests when you lose combat, and sometimes both sides take morale tests. Midgard streamlines that by simply saying, if you lose a combat, you are pushed back half a spear throw. Your unit will break when you run out of stamina points, and it's worth noting that if you're pushed into your friends, as is about to happen, you can also lose stamina doing that. So what has to happen now is the elves need to retreat. This unit is going to go back directly half a spear throw to its rear, and it's going to push back the unit that's supporting it behind, which we'll deal with in a second. Now, there's going to be a bit of a problem there because this is going to require command tests. I'm a big subscriber to the theory that more people died in ancient and medieval battles, in the crush, in the rout, than actually in the front line fighting itself. So both units are going to have to pass a command test or lose another point of stamina. So front unit has passed on a 3. The rear unit has also passed on a 6. The elves breathe a sigh of relief because, of course, our hero spent his mighty deed saving his skin, so he wouldn't be able to re-roll that if he needed to. Next, the orcs are going to move up. One key thing about Midgard Heroic Battles is that when you make a pursuit move, you can ignore enemy killing zones. So at the moment, this elf unit normally projects an enemy killing zone onto these units, but they may ignore it for the purpose of this pursuit move. And this is the advantage of getting a breakthrough in combat. So these orcs are going to pursue half a spear throw, keeping in touch with the unit over here. And this unit will also pursue. Both units keep their charging or winning markers. Now, the supporting units in the combat can also follow up, and this is really powerful because it allows you to move your whole front line forward. Basically, you're reinforcing success here. So this unit cannot charge the enemy, but they could move right up to effectively pin that unit down for the next round, and all 3 units in the rear can advance half a spear throw as long as they're continuing to provide support for the primary fighting unit, which they are doing. And that's the end of our combat round. The elves are in trouble, and the orcs are most definitely pushing forwards. So moving on to our second situation, I'm afraid, sorry elf fans, the elves are in trouble again here. So what's going on here is we've got 2 orc units facing off against an elf unit. The elves obviously lost the flank, or the orcs have broken through. And this orc unit is now in a position to mount a flank charge on this elven unit. It's the elves' turn though, so the elves have got an option, but it's not a great one. The problem they've got is they can't charge this unit because they're in 2 enemy units' killing zones. And this unit is not the nearest unit. If that unit was right up in front of them, they could charge it and be happy. But unfortunately, they're worried by the fact they've got orcs coming around in the rear. So what they're going to do, they're going to try and pull off a change facing manoeuvre to avoid the flank charge. Changing facing is a special move described on page 33. And generally, it's only ever used if a unit is in dire straits, like the elves here. All the unit needs to do is pass a command test, and it can turn to face off against both units, even though it's in both their killing zones. So let's see if we can pull off this command test. Oh, a 1, just at the moment you don't want it. Now this is really bad news because unfortunately the elf hero has blown both of his mighty deeds, doing mighty things earlier in the turn, so the elf unit can do nothing, I'm afraid, for this turn. They are clearly terrified by the sight of the orcs approaching. In the orcs movement phase, they're obviously going to throw a charge in, Both Orc units are impetuous, so there's no choice here. They've got enemy within their killing zone, so they have to charge it. So that Orc unit moves straight in there and gains a charging or winning marker, and this one comes in here. As you can see over here, it is completely behind the front line of the enemy unit, so that is going to count as a flank or rear charge. So, as this counts as a flank charge, both Orc units are going to count as primary fighting units. So I'm putting 12 dice aside for this unit and 12 dice aside for this unit. They're throwing their full number of dice. They're also both impetuous with a charging or winning marker at full strength, so they both gain an extra dice for that. The Orcs can choose which of the two units take the hits in the combat. I'm going to stick with what's fairly normal. I'm going to take the hits on the unit to the front, but I need to declare that before the combat starts. Right, let's have a look at the Elven dice then. So, because this is a proper flank or rear attack, the Elves halve their basic number of dice. So, they have 12 dice, but that's immediately, unfortunately, halved to 6 dice. However, they have a level 2 hero fighting with them, so he adds his 2 dice on, that's unaffected by the penalties, and they still have the Spears as tribute ability, giving them 2 extra dice. The Elves have got 10 dice, but it's not looking great against the Orcs' 26. Let's see what happens. Well, the Elves have done better than expected here. Let's have a look. So again, I'm going to put the dice out in pairs because the Orcs' armour is 2. So we've got 2, 4, 5. A lot of 1s, but the Elves don't have the charging or winning marker, so they can't re-roll any of those. So 5 hits, not bad for a unit on the ropes. Let's see how the Orcs do. Right, once again, because the Elven armour is free, I'm going to put the dice out in groups of 3 to make this quick and easy. So the Orcs have 8 hits so far, but we do have a few dice that missed on 1s, 5 in fact. So they're going to re-roll those because both the units have got charging or winning markers. And that gains them another hit. They have got 9 hits to the Elves' 5. So let's go through and top these up. Now, no units have got any support here, which simplifies things a lot. So the Elves are going to take 9 hits. Our little old friend here, the Elf Hero, is going to have to roll 1, 2, 3 risk to Heroes dice to see if he survives the combat. He does. Good work. But the Elves are in trouble here. Now, with the Elves inflicting 5 points of damage, that is going to put 2 points of damage, being armour 2, onto this Orc unit. However, with 9 points of damage, that is going to put 3 points of damage onto the Elven unit. And the worst is about to happen here, because when a unit has been hit in flank or rear and loses the combat, it cannot retreat. It loses an additional point of stamina. And what's going to happen here is that will add on a 4th point of stamina damage to the unit, which means that it breaks and flees. Our hero will have to decide whether he's going to stand and fight the Orcs single-handed or whether he's going to flee and lose a point of reputation. Our Elf hero has made the prudent decision to scarp her. So these 2 Orc units will now make a hold ground move. They lose their charging and winning markers because they've killed all the Elves in sight, but they can both move half a spear throw just to line themselves up for the next turn. Now I'm just going to throw in a third situation here, which is, I've been asked this one occasionally on the forums, it's what if you get 2 units fighting 2 units in a situation like this, where 1 unit has gone into the flank or rear? Well, let's have a look. So here we've got 2 Elven units. It's the Orcs' turn. So this Orc unit, being impetuous, will have to charge the unit directly in front of it, gaining its charging winning marker. This Orc unit will also charge, going straight forwards, and will just hit both those Elven units in front of it. But what happens in the combat? Well, this is potentially a messy situation, but it's actually covered by the rules for splitting multi-unit combat on pages 54 and 55 of the rulebooks. As we have 2 elf units fighting 2 orc units, it has to be split into 2 one-on-one combats. What will happen here is that the orc unit that has hit both the units has to split off, which we just do by separating the unit by a blade's length like that. And this will leave the combat looking like this. It's clearly a frontal combat, as this orc unit did not start behind the second elven unit's front line, and we might actually use the get in move to align the orc unit slightly like that so that it looks better, and also that when we get to combat resolution we don't forget it's a frontal attack. If you're the orc player, you might feel a bit disappointed that you don't get the advantage of a flank here, despite the unit having hit the flank of that one originally, but the orcs actually still have the advantage here. If the orcs fight this combat first and the elves lose it, they'll be pushed back into the combat behind and automatically lose a point of stamina. So I'd say the elves are still very much on the back foot. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope the elf trauma wasn't too much for you. If there's any comments you want to make on the video or any other situations you'd like me to cover, please feel free to put those in the comments below and I'll deal with those as and when I'm able. Once again, thank you very much for playing Midgard, watching the video, and please do like and subscribe if you'd like to see more.